Alright guys, it's time for Q&As, and as a reminder, these are for educational purposes only and should not be used as medical advice. So for any medical concerns, please see your doctor. I actually just asked this question to our audience because when I posted about it in the Facebook group, a lot of moms said they never listened to a podcast and weren't sure where to start. So my favorite way is through the iPhone on the podcast app. You can search for anything. All right, so there are a lot of different ways, but there's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher. You can do it on your phone, so you can get the app. If you have an iPhone, you already have the podcast app. Or you can search it right on your desktop. So for Apple Podcasts, it's going to be through iTunes, so a lot of Macs have that. Otherwise, you can search podcasts on Google. Also, Spotify is all on your desktop as well. All right, so in general, no foods are off limits. Ideally, you just have a balanced and varied diet. However, there are some foods that you should limit or avoid if it's affecting you negatively. So I'm gonna go through some of those foods here. Okay, so first is fish with high levels of mercury. So tuna, swordfish, orange roughy, there's a few others, but definitely look at your mercury content while eating. Next would be herbs and supplements. So if you were taking a bunch of supplements before you were pregnant, like a multivitamin or extra iron, always check with your doctor when you begin breastfeeding to make sure those are still okay. All right, so the next thing to limit would be alcohol. For obvious reasons, you can absolutely safely have like a glass of wine while breastfeeding. There's definitely safe ways to do it. Just it's important to limit and know your limit. All right, the next thing to limit would be caffeine. It's totally safe to have caffeine while breastfeeding. You just might notice if you reach over a certain threshold, your baby might be a little more active. So it's safe to limit to about 200 milligrams per day. And finally, the last thing you might want to just limit would be highly processed food. And honestly, this goes for anyone. There's just so many processed foods out there. But just to just be conscious of everything that you eat can potentially make its way to your milk. All right, you're in luck because Pam from Mommy Knows Best just did an awesome video on how to make our lactation brownies. So I'm just gonna go ahead and link it here and swipe up. All right, the best vitamins for your baby at this age are vitamin D, vitamin K, B12, and iron. All right, this is something a lot of babies do while breastfeeding. It's a natural reflex actually, and a lot of the time they're learning, they're using their senses to kind of figure things out and also repositioning themselves as they're breastfeeding. So just the act of getting induced, there's no research for showing it to slow your milk supply, but being induced could lead to other things that could lower your milk supply. But again, there's not a ton of research for it, and there's a lot of factors that can play in. All right, so postpartum anxiety and high anxiety are gonna have a lot of similarities. You're gonna feel a lot of the same things, but postpartum anxiety is typically brought on after you have your baby, and a lot of your worry and anxieties is surrounded about the baby. Also, a lot of times postpartum anxiety affects everyday situations, and it can interfere with your ability to function. So there's kind of different levels sometimes, or you worry about different things. They can, of course, both be very serious though. So if you are finding that it's interfering with how you live your life and you are worrying a lot, definitely make an appointment with a doctor and talk about it. All right, guys, that's all the Q&As I have for this week. Again, our Q&As are every single Thursday. Next week is Christmas Eve, so I will not be doing Q&As then. However, we will continue the following week on New Year's Eve. So that'll be fun. So go ahead and submit your questions here, and I will answer them in a couple weeks.
And if you're not following us yet, be sure to follow us at Mommy Knows Best on Instagram. And remember, if you're watching this and doubting yourself, you are a great mom. So thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next week.